Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for coming back to my channel. This is Makalasi, and I have been studying esoteric information for the last 20 years. And I feel it's a time now that we should all share our information so therefore we can help each other. So if you've been following my information, we've come to a conclusion, and you can watch my old videos to hear it. We've come to the conclusion that time is an illusion, and that we're stuck in quarantine or stuck in the lower world because we're in the cycle of rotation on the lower world. Primarily because we believe that time is linear, but in reality, time is a cycle. And we know that time is a cycle based on the ancients. They always talked about time as a cycle. And also, when you understand time as a cycle, it makes things a lot more easier to understand. So stuff like time, right? Because right now we think time is linear, past, present, and future, but in reality, it's a circle. So once you understand it's a circle, you understand that there's cycles, and then there's prophecies and things that happen with the cycle, and you can understand the bigger picture if you look at all spiritualities instead of just one. So when you look at all spiritualities, they always talk about, resurrection, which is resurrection of consciousness, fall of consciousness, virgin birth, the first female to resurrect divine consciousness, right? So we understand there's a lot of things happening with divine consciousness. On top of that, we understand we're in a holographic universe. And if you saw my last video, I talked about how we have to be half into the matrix and half out, because what's happening is what we don't realize is we're always manifesting. We're either always fucking manifesting so we can have an interaction with what is inside of us internally. So there's two ways we manifest. We manifest our conscious, which is we're consciously manifesting the desires we want, and we're unconsciously manifesting. When you're unconsciously manifesting, you're manifesting your subconscious and a lot of the shadow aspects of yourself that you don't really want to face. So a lot of times when you think of your shadow, think of it as like the shadow aspects or the parts of yourself that you hide, the skeletons in your closet that you don't want people to see. So really what happens is we don't really know our shadow. So what we need to do, you shouldn't, and I don't really recommend going to someone else to tell you what your shadow is. It doesn't work that way, okay? Because it's you. It's what you're hiding. It's what you're not even honest with. You have to find your shadow. So what happens is you go into the matrix, you interact with the matrix, and then you come out and analyze it. And this is really interesting because a lot of times people think of love soulmates, like, oh, this is my soulmate when they meet someone. But soulmate is going to be something when you're in contact with your soul. Since a lot of people are not in contact with their soul, you're probably meeting a shadow mate. And that's still a soulmate, but it's kind of someone who's connected to your shadow. And you have to pay attention to this because usually a shadow mate is something that's connected to your subconscious of your programming that you're not paying attention to, but they're bringing it up to the surface. So usually there's always like heartbreak or something incorrect or something, but you have to get those patterns so you can understand the manifestations of it. So once you understand that, you know that we're supposed to be half in the matrix and half out, so we can kind of analyze, what we're doing in there, but then also, come out. But right now, people are not coming back to recenter. So that's what we need to deal with a lot of spiritual people in Eastern philosophy. They always talk about meditation. They always talk about looking within. They always talk about reflecting. They're always talking about, the universe is a reflection of yourself, because they understand that the universe is a reflection of the universe is a reflection of your universe. However, the modern man is not coming back to reflect. He's not analyzing himself. So what he's doing is he's consistently going into the matrix, manifesting his shadow, having interactions with that shadow, and then manifesting more shadow, and therefore they're kind of getting sucked deeper into the matrix, and they're pulling in by their shadow. And that's why a lot of times a spirituality don't look fondly on women, because the shadow is connected to the feminine side of the consciousness. So the shadow is really interesting because you can get pulled into the matrix, but really you want to get pulled out, because you're not supposed to stay in there. You're supposed to analyze your shadow and then fix it from coming outside. And then once you do that, then you can have no shadow. So therefore your will could be, you can work with your will, you can manifest, right? So basically this is how it should be, right? So right now we're stuck in a time loop, because right now we are not sure what. We think that time is linear, and because we believe time is linear, we're getting our stuff stuck in quarantine, because we think it's linear, just straight, but it's not, because we're in limitation. It's actually a loop. So once we just accept it's a loop and start corrugating our time with the cycles and the rhythm of nature, we'd be more in line with nature. But for right now, since we're not in sync with nature, it's better just to sync your consciousness with the sun. So every morning, noon, and afternoon, always do a sun adoration, not because you're worshiping the sun, because you want to sync your sun with the natural rhythm of time. Okay, so that's the first thing you need to do. But right now, we're stuck in a time loop, so we're quarantined from the upper world. And really what that means is we are ruled by our shadow, our ego, thought forms, sex demons, we're into power, and we're not authentic. And what I means is because a lot of people are not coming back to recenter and analyze what they're manifesting in the holographic universe. They're actually manifested through their shadows. So it's important to pay attention to, because a lot of spiritual people, they say they want to be spiritual, but they don't want to do the dirty work. They just want the recognition of it. Okay. So really this is how we're manifesting now. We're ruled by our shadow, ego, thought forms, sex demons, power, and we're non-authentic, because what's happening is people are coming to themselves, and instead of getting centered to understand their manifestations, they're going in here and they're ruled by fears, illusions, manipulations, and the agents of chaos. So what happened is this is supposed to be your home space where you come back into your consciousness, and you reset and assess the darkness that you've happened, and you're supposed to fix it, right? And then you're supposed to go out. So this is supposed to be you outside of the matrix, and then you inside the matrix. And what happens is when you can get to this point where the matrix is following your will, right? So this is where your will and your inner voice is being guided. Then you can practice with here. So what happens is the first thing you need to do, this is the evolution of the way you should be. At first, you're ruled by your shadow, your ego, your thought forms, your sex demons, power, and you're not authentic. And that's because you're going to the matrix and you're ruled by your fears, delusion, manipulations, and the agents of chaos. Eventually, when you learn how to clean out your shadow, this is why the feminine has to clean out her shadow, then she can have a clear understanding of her will, and then she can start tapping to the upper voice of the upper world. And from there, she can put her will and the upper world's voice into the matrix, so she can practice. So really what happens, you have your shadow. Then you want to clean up your shadow by understanding the matrix, and then you can have your will, and then you can practice your will on the matrix. And then eventually when you start doing all the divine work, you can start having access to the upper world. So the upper world, where you're connected to the divine will of the upper world, you will be understanding cosmic law and order, because remember, there's cosmic law and order. So you have to follow cosmic law and order. This is what angels, prophets, and also the Messiah does. So really, first you have your shadow, your ego. You think no one's paying attention, but they are. You clean up your shadow, and then you put your will into the holographic universe. Once you start cleaning up the shadow, you'll start to hear the inner voice of the upper world, where you make contact. Eventually, when you hear the inner voice of the upper world, then you will start doing the divine will of the upper world, which is the cosmic law. You'll follow cosmic law, which angels, prophets, and the Messiah does, right? And then from there, you put the will of the upper world into practice, and you do service into the matrix. So this is the evolution. Right now we're here. We need to learn how to be honest with ourselves and our shadow so we can clear it up. Then you can impose your will into the matrix. But once you start cleaning up your shadow, you start to hear the inner voice of the upper world. And then you can have divine will, put divine will in your will. So what happens if you don't clean up your shadow and you're here and you're like, I want to contact the upper world straight up. You're not even trying to do the work. You're going to go up to the upper world and talk to them with your shadow, your ego, your thought forms, your sex demons, your power, your non-authentic selves, and you're like, yeah, let me do your will. It's not going to happen, because the upper world sees everything, and there's cosmic law and order. So everything that you've done from the past, every thought, everything that you do would be taken into consideration. So if you can't do their will, your shadow will, and your will. So you kind of have to be a true vessel for the upper world. So therefore you have to clean up all your shadow and live in accordance to cosmic law. And then when you live to cosmic law, then you can interact with the upper worlds to be a service to the matrix. And that's my quick video. Hope you like it. Peace.